Hey guys, tonight we slip into the shadowy elegance of a place that smells like rosewater, rat poison, and raw ambition. You're standing at the edge of Rue du Cimetière, a name you'll come to find disturbingly literal, where each stone whispers with old footsteps and hidden stains. A thin drizzle hangs in the air, and the gaslight flickers like it's seen things it can't unsee. In front of you is the narrow door to Madame Moreau's hat shop. Well, shop is a generous word. It's more like a velvet-lined oubliette, designed to consume wide-eyed apprentices like you. You step inside, and everything changes. The scent hits you first. Scorched felt, old starch, a trace of mothballs, and beneath it all, something vaguely iron and damp. The floor creaks under your boots, not because the wood is weak, but because it's resentful. You're the newest stitch in a tapestry of secrets, and every uneven floorboard seems to know it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop your location and what time it is where you're watching, because in this shop time has its own ideas. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. A bell chimes behind you, faint, cracked, like it's given up hope, and the shopkeeper doesn't look up. She knows you're there. Everyone always knows. You trudge forward toward the workroom past velvet hats shaped like clouds and mourning bonnets edged in raven feathers. The hallway narrows, the air thickens. You pass a painting of a young woman in a hat too large for her head, eyes oddly lifelike. Her smile seems newer than the rest of the frame. Your hand grazes the wall. Is that wax, or something more organic? You're already regretting this, but it's too late. The door to the workshop swings open with an operatic creak. 10 girls look up. Not one of them smiles. You're not the first to enter this room. You won't be the last. Madame Moreau appears, stitched out of shadows and silk. She doesn't walk, she glides. Her gown rustles with more starch than dignity, and her pince-nez glints like the blade of a knife. She says nothing. Her gaze scans you, pauses at your slightly smudged hem, and lingers on your chipped fingernail like it's a declaration of war. She clicks her tongue once. That's it. One note, and your career is already on life support. Stand straight, hisses a girl behind you. Her voice is low, sharp, and, judging by her neat topknot, backed by months of survival. Don't blink too often. She hates blinking. You try not to, which of course means you blink 4 times in a row. Your station is a chipped table next to a girl who smells like lavender and death. She nods at you once without warmth and threads a needle with terrifying speed. You pretend to know how to sit. You do not. Now comes the hazing. A tower of fabric is dropped in front of you. Silk, lace, velvet, even something vaguely scaly. Eel, maybe. You don't ask. Each bolt comes with instructions that feel less like tasks and more like riddles. Pleat until its size. Match the grain to the widow's grief. Don't cross the silver thread with the cardinal's ribbon. Right. Easy. In the corner of the room stands a mannequin with no face, just the faint impression of a nose and lips pressed into faded velvet. Her hat is elaborate, cascading with netting and plumage, but something in the air says she's not just decorative. You catch her pointing toward your table once. No one else seems to notice. This shop isn't just about fashion. It's about hierarchy, pain, and survival. Madame Moreau has trained generations of milliners. Most of them don't last. A few go on to dress royalty. One allegedly stabbed a duke with a corsage pin. That last part is debated, of course. Historians still argue whether it was murder, self-defense, or avant-garde performance art. You're here now, amid them. One of the living for now. A hatbox crashes to the ground and no one flinches. Not even you. That's what survival looks like. Calm in chaos. Serenity in the face of falling felt. Someone coughs. Someone else hums a nursery rhyme in reverse. And above it all, the scratch of needles the size of steam, the faint click of scissors, and the ever-present whisper of lace against bone. Madame Moreau does not raise her voice. She doesn't need to. The air itself trembles under her disapproval. When she floats to your workstation, the temperature drops a full 3 degrees, and the girl beside you visibly stiffens, her needle freezing mid-loop. You, unfortunately, are still holding your hat block upside down. She notices. Her gaze hovers on your hands, then flicks to the smudge on your cheek. Ink, soot, your own dried blood, and finally lands on your fingernails. One is chipped, the index finger on your right hand, barely noticeable to a sane person. But Madame is not overly concerned with sanity. With no warning, she reaches down, grabs your hand and turns it upward like she's about to read your palm. This, she murmurs, almost to herself, is not the hand of someone who intends to stay. Then she drops it. She glides away. No one speaks. You can feel them not speaking. You're still trembling when Claudette leans over. She's maybe 17, maybe 40. It's hard to tell under the candlelight and trauma. That, she whispers, wasn't a warning. That was a death certificate, pre-folded. You don't reply. You can't. Your throat is dry, and you're realizing your chip nail isn't even the worst of it. You're also wearing a visible seam line on a morning hat. No one talks about the old apprentice who wore clashing thread and disappeared. You're beginning to understand why. The hours stretch like bad elastic. Your job for now is simple. Finish one feathered half bonnet for second-day grief. Whatever that means, and don't die. You prick your finger twice in the first 10 minutes. No one offers you a thimble. That's not how this shop works. You bleed quietly onto the underside of the silk, hoping no one notices. They do. A soft scoff from behind. Don't worry, someone mutters. We all start with blood. Some of us end with it too. Lunch is not a break. Lunch is punishment disguised as soup. You're handed a chipped bowl of what they call lapin à l'ancienne, but the meat is stringy and the broth is grey. You're not sure whether to thank someone or call the police. On the edge of the table sits a preserved stoat in a lace collar, staring into the distance with the empty calm of someone who's seen too much. Madame Moreau passes by and gently brushes a hand across its head. My first client, she says. No one laughs. Your fingers are sticky with broth and thread when the bell above the front door rings. Clear, high, final. A customer. The room freezes. Madame appears, seemingly out of the wall, and floats toward the front. One of the girls follows, pushing a trolley stacked with bonnets like they're cakes in a cursed patisserie. You hear the voices, breathy, aristocratic, full of disdain. A woman gasps. Oh no, that's far too modern. Do you think I'm vulgar? Madame responds in smooth poison. Only when you insist on green for a fourth morning. Historical side note? The colours of grief in 19th century France weren't just for show. They were coded, ranked, and strictly timed. A widow might spend 2 years working through black, grey, mauve, and lavender. Get it wrong, and society would treat you like you spat on your husband's grave and stole his pocket watch. There's laughter at the front, sharp and empty. Claudette mutters, One of them once asked for a happy widow hat. I almost stabbed her with the hat pin. You chuckle. Claudette does not. The stoat slides from the table. You didn't see it move, but it's on the floor now, its beady eyes level with yours. You blink. It doesn't. You return to your work. The hat is, somehow, worse than when you started. Your stitch line curves like a dying earthworm, and the feather won't lie flat. You press it with your palm, gently. It snaps. A hush falls over the table. Even the thread stops unwinding. You don't look up. You just say, softly, Is there another one? There is not. Feathers, especially egret plumes, are precious. Some are imported illegally. Some are plucked from birds that no longer exist. One hat here features the tail feathers of a ghost heron, which may or may not have been a myth invented by Madame herself. Historians still argue whether the bird was real or just a metaphor for doomed apprentices. Use rat fur, someone says from across the table. You don't know if they're joking. Later that afternoon, you're allowed a bathroom break. It's not so much a kindness as a logistical concession to biology. The toilet is down a narrow staircase, past shelves of unlabelled dyes and a jar labelled simply useful bones. The corridor reeks of vinegar, wet velvet and old secrets. There's a door you're told not to open. It's not locked. You open it anyway. Inside, a room filled with half-finished hats, hundreds of them, hung on pegs and frozen mid-creation. They sway slightly. There's no breeze. One of them is whispering. You shut the door. Fast. Back upstairs, you're handed your next task. A full mourning toque, trimmed in jet beads and infused with appropriate despair. You ask if that's a metaphor. It is not. The jet beads are real. Fossilized wood, polished until they absorb light. They're heavier than you expect. Each one feels like it carries a tiny echo of a funeral. You stitch in silence. Your fingers cramp. You bleed again. Nobody offers a bandage. But one girl slips a sugar cube onto your table. No note, just that tiny gesture. She never looks at you again. And for now, you are still here. Your fingers are not fingers anymore. They're tiny instruments of suffering, trembling under the weight of thread that refuses to cooperate, and fabric that seems to resent you personally. It's only your third day, and already your hands look like you've been politely tortured by someone who prefers delicate methods. Paper cuts, needle pricks, invisible blisters that scream when touched. You're tasked with shaping a brim, which sounds like a quaint little task until you realise it requires perfect tension, precise curvature, and the patience of a Swiss watchmaker. One wrong tug and the wire that gives it shape warps into something that looks more like a pastry than a hat. A girl named Delphine glances at your work and offers a sympathetic wince. "That brim's got opinions," she says, "and it doesn't like you." It's meant to be comforting. Somehow it isn't. The tools you've been given are technically legal, by 19th century French standards, which is to say barely. Your needle is thin enough to stab through leather, your scissors are honed to surgical sharpness, and your hat pin is, frankly, a weapon. There's a rumour that one of the older apprentices once defended herself from a drunken coachman using only a milliner's bodkin. She survived. He did not. Historians still argue whether that's fact or folklore, but the bodkin in question now hangs above the fireplace like a family heirloom, or a warning. Madame Moreau appears again. You don't hear her until she's too close, her scent curling around you, bergamot starch and something slightly metallic. She picks up your half-finished hat without asking, and inspects it under a gas lamp. You brace for critique. She says nothing. Worse. She places it back down gently like something already dead. Then she walks away. You have never known such terror in silence. The next task comes with no instructions, only a single white ribbon and the words, "Make it speak." Right. You stare at the ribbon like it's about to open its mouth and sing. It doesn't. What it does do is fray. Instantly. The edges unravel like they're desperate to escape. You cut it again and again. You're losing length and patience at an alarming rate. Across the table, a girl named Agnès clicks her tongue. "Flame it," she says. You blink. "Burn the edge," she clarifies. "Just a kiss of the candle. Not enough to blacken, just enough to scare it straight." You try, and immediately set your cuff on fire. The room erupts into controlled chaos. Claudette grabs the water basin. Someone else smothers your sleeve with a bolt of raw muslin. Madame doesn't move. She simply watches, judging not your mistake, but your recovery. Once the fabric stops smoking and your heart returns to a non-lethal rhythm, she glides over. She doesn't scold you. She hands you a fresh ribbon. It's the closest thing to affection you've ever received from her. Your nerves are frayed, but somehow your ribbon is not. This one bends to your will, folding into a perfect rosette, which Agnès grudgingly nods at. You're learning. Slowly. Painfully, but learning. By mid-afternoon, your fingers are swollen and red, your eyes grainy from gaslight and effort. You take exactly 3 sips of lukewarm chicory coffee, then return to your station to find someone has borrowed your scissors. They don't return them. You borrow another pair, slightly rusted. The handle sticks. You use them anyway. Someone sneezes behind you, no one says bless you. This isn't that kind of workplace. Just before sunset, Madame calls for a demonstration. Each apprentice must present their day's work, one by one, on the shop's central mannequin. She's called Camille, and no one speaks to her directly. She's beautiful, lifeless, and slightly tilted, like she knows something we don't. Your turn comes too soon. You place your feathered half-bonnet atop Camille's head. It slides slightly. You adjust it. The lace flutters. The rosette holds. Silence. Madame approaches. She circles Camille once, twice, then stops. "She could wear this to her third husband's funeral," she murmurs. You don't know if that's a compliment, but you nod, gratefully, carefully. Later, Claudette leans over and whispers, "That's high praise. Last week she told me my veil looked like a widow who murdered her husband." You smile. You're still here. One of the fringe girls, Fleur maybe, mentions over dinner that her cousin works at a bakery. "Much easier," she says. "All you have to worry about is boiling sugar." Claudette raises an eyebrow. Have you boiled sugar? It's weaponized syrup. The debate spirals into giggles, and for a moment, it almost feels normal, like you're just a group of girls sharing stories, not conscripted into lace warfare. That night, you dream of ribbons that strangle, feathers that whisper, and Madame Moreau with scissors for hands. You wake up with thread tangled in your hair. Welcome to day 4. Day 4 opens with the sound of retching. Someone is bent over the waste basin in the corner, heaving up what looks like yesterday's rabbit stew and possibly their soul. Madame doesn't flinch. She adjusts her cuffs, hums a few bars of La Marseillaise, and walks straight past. This is not unusual. You're assigned to the velvet line today, meaning you'll spend the next 14 hours wrestling with a material that behaves like a pampered cat, soft, moody, and determined to ruin your life if you even look at it the wrong way. Velvet in 19th century Paris is status, symbolism, and suffering all stitched into one luxurious sheen. One misplaced thumbprint and you've bruised it beyond salvation. It remembers your sins. You place it gently on your block and whisper a silent prayer. Meanwhile, your stomach growls. It's not just the bad stew or lack of breakfast. It's the general atmosphere. This place feeds on nerves. You chew the inside of your cheek to stay focused. Eat something, Claudette says beside you, handing you half a sugar biscuit. It's been broken in someone's apron, possibly since last week. You eat it anyway. Lunch, when it arrives, is worse than usual. A watery cabbage broth with a skin so thick it has ambitions. Madame calls it traditional fare. You call it revenge with a spoon. But the real moment of the day doesn't come with food, it comes with a hat. You're told to help construct a bonnet destined for the Comtesse de Rohan. You imagine luxury, gold thread, rare beads, maybe a peacock feather that still smells like bird. Instead, they hand you a half-finished shape, lined with musty crinoline, and whisper, "Make this one unforgettable." Claudette leans in. They mean that literally. The Comtesse has a terrible memory. The hat has to be so strange she remembers to pay for it. You raise an eyebrow. "How strange?" Anais responds. "We once stitched in the bells from a cat collar. Subtle, but effective." You start pinning. Halfway through, you're handed a velvet rose with petals so finely cut you think they're real. You hesitate. "Can I ask, what is this made of?" Someone shrugs. Probably not something you want to know. You attach it anyway. As you work, Madame floats past, trailing a whisper of disdain and something that might be approval. She pauses. "Do you smell that?" she asks no one in particular. Everyone freezes. It's the rabbit stew again. You all know it. She sniffs once, then moves on. You exhale. One girl wipes her forehead with the hem of her apron, leaving a streak of sweat and starch. The day drips by. Time here is viscous, like syrup or dye. The bells toll outside, 5 o'clock 6, but no one dares stop. You work until Madame says stop. And even then, you keep one hand hovering over your thread just in case. At twilight, the room softens. Gaslight shimmers on hat pins like daggers in a jewel box. You glance toward the fireplace and stop. The stoat is gone. Not just moved. Gone. You tap Claudette. "Where's—" She cuts you off. "Don't ask. They always go wandering." You blink. "They?" She doesn't answer. Instead, she whispers, "Look sharp. The rep is coming." A rustle from the front. In steps a man, thin, twitchy, wearing a hat too small for his head and gloves too loose for his hands. He carries a case. Inside are this week's extras, special fabrics, contraband lace, maybe a few imported dyes that would earn you a fine if the constables knew. He opens it like a magician. Madame Moreau glides over. They exchange no words, just nods. Then she pulls out something that makes every girl in the room stop. Black lace. Not just any black lace. Chantilly. The kind made by blind widows in northern France with patterns so fine they resemble frost on a coffin lid. Legend says the widow lace makers used human hair to finish the fringe. Historians still argue if that's true, but the colour is unlike anything else. Not quite black. More like mourning dipped in ink and dried in a crypt. You get to touch it, only for a second. Madame Moreau hands you the tiniest swatch, barely the size of a thumbnail, and says, "Work this into the Comtesse's hat, but hide it. Let her feel it before she sees it." The challenge is absurd, the pressure worse, but your hands remember yesterday's failures and guide you forward. You do it. Somehow. The lace disappears beneath a rosette. a whisper under a sigh. Madame sees, says nothing. Again, that's worse. That evening, as you sweep the floor with a bent broom and half a soul, you hear a sound that stops you cold, a giggle. From the storeroom, you are alone. Or, you were. You peer inside. Nothing. Just rows of mannequin heads, velvet hats, and a single ribbon hanging from a nail. The ribbon waves gently like it's saying goodbye. You shut the door and whisper to yourself, "I was never here." You wake up to your fingers throbbing. Not metaphorically, literally. Every joint feels like it's been individually cursed by a particularly vindictive lace fairy. You flex them slowly. A scab splits on your thumb. Congratulations, you're healing. Kind of. It's pouring rain outside, which means damp air inside the shop, which means mildew season. Madame Moreau is in a mood. She steps into the workroom with a shawl wrapped around her like a shroud, declaring, "Today we stitch with urgency. Paris smells like rot." No one responds. Your first task is deceptively simple. Organise the thread drawers. But here, that means matching colour not by name, but by emotional resonance. Is this grey, ashes of betrayal, or just mourner's breath? One is used for veils worn after a discreet affair ends badly. The other is for hats worn at the opera when you're trying to forget someone you watched drown. You go with your gut. Half an hour in, Madame passes by and mutters, "You have the thread sense of a provincial midwife," which might be the closest thing to encouragement you've received. By midday your fingers are bleeding again. You try to hide it, but Anais catches the drip. She doesn't offer a rag. She hands you a string of dark red beads. If it's going to bleed, make it fashion. She's not wrong. You incorporate the beads into the trim, and suddenly your mistake becomes intentional. Bold, avant-garde. Madame raises an eyebrow as she passes, which, in her language, is practically applause. Outside, the rain turns into a deluge. You hear a splash, a horse whinnying, a scream. No one moves. Tuesday traffic, Claudette murmurs. The rest of the day is spent on invisible seams, a concept you once thought philosophical, but no, it's literal. Your stitching must be so fine it's invisible even under magnification. One girl has a lens on a stick just for this. You ask to borrow it. "No," she says without looking up. You try anyway, you fail, you unpick, restitch, repeat. Every hour feels like a test, and the shop knows when you're getting cocky. The moment you think you've got it, your thread tangles, your lace puckers, and your thimble rolls off the table and into oblivion. Around 4 o'clock the delivery boy arrives. He's 12 years old and speaks only in questions. "Did you need this plume? Was this one dyed in wine or beetroot? Is Madame aware someone's been sleeping in the felt closet?" You blink. "I didn't," you begin. He shrugs. Wasn't accusing, just wondering. You decide not to engage further. That evening the air is thick with candle smoke and burnt starch. Madame calls for a demonstration. Again. This time it's for a hat inspired by a tragic romance in 3 acts. No further instructions. You panic. Claudette hisses, "Use contrast, soft brim, harsh trim, like love, but weaponized." You dig through the remnants. Pale tulle, harsh braid, and one perfect raven feather that seems to vibrate in your hand. You don't ask where it came from. Probably best not to know. You work like your fingers aren't falling apart, which they are. At last you step back. It's hideous, but intentional. Madame studies it, circles, then whispers, "It has regret." You exhale. The room breaks into whispers after she leaves. Apparently, regret is a good sign. Last week she said someone's fascinator reeked of delusion. You start to clean your station, hands trembling. That's when you notice something under the table, a note, folded once, thick paper, smells like lavender and something else. Ash, maybe. You open it. It's a drawing, of you, sitting at your station, with your mouth sewn shut. You look around, no one's watching, you tuck it away. Later, Claudette finds you at the sink trying to scrub blood out of lace. She watches you for a moment, then says, "It's not a threat." You blink. "The note," she adds. "It's a warning." "From who?" She shrugs. "Could be anyone. Could be everyone." You dry your hands slowly. The lace is ruined. The blood never really comes out. The shop quiets as the lamps are dimmed. One by one, girls leave, clutching their half-finished work like talismans. You're the last to go. As you pass the mannequin Camille, her hat has changed. You swear it wasn't that colour before. And then the gaslight flickers. Just once. You don't look back. You arrive at the shop early the next morning. Too early. The front shutters are still down, the gas lamp still unlit, and the street reeks of wet soot and rotting chestnuts. Somewhere, a fishmonger is yelling at a cat. You hesitate outside the door, but then it creaks open. Not by you, by itself. You step in. The silence is deeper than usual. No scissors snipping, no whispers, no footsteps. Just the heavy, cloistered stillness of fabric that's listening. You move carefully down the hallway, where portraits of forgotten milliners peer from dust-darkened frames. One has her eyes scratched out, another seems to have moved positions overnight. Inside the workroom, a smell hits you. Sharp, medicinal, like rusted spoons and old science. The Mercury Room. Today's assignment is a polishing detail, finishing felt hats meant for high society, the kind worn at galas where nobody eats and everyone plots. But the real task is the Mercury, because 19th century hatmaking doesn't just involve ribbons and stitching, it involves mercury nitrate, used to treat furs into felt. It's toxic, everyone knows that. They just don't care. Don't breathe too deeply, Annius says as she passes holding her breath. Or do, your choice. You walk into the back room. It's a nightmare, a quiet one. Dozens of half-finished hats hang like strange fruit, their linings wet with the chemicals that make them smooth and shapely. A single boy, maybe 16, is hunched over a table, polishing with a rag. His hands are raw, his eyes are red, his humming is off-key and off-sane. You approach, tentatively. Hi. He doesn't look up. You notice the basin beside him. The water is opaque, silver, thick, glistening like melted moonlight. You ask his name. He replies, still not looking up, I forget. That's when you notice his eyelashes. Gone. The rag he's using is threadbare lace, probably ruined stock, probably poisonous now. Are you all right, you ask? Depends who you ask, he mutters. Madame says I'm very productive. The doctor says I'm very doomed. You're not sure how to respond. You return to your task. You're given gloves, but only one. A practical joke, a budget issue, or a test? Probably all three. You don't ask questions anymore. You hold your breath as long as you can while gently buffing the felt, careful not to touch your face or inhale too deeply. The fumes are heady, sweet and wrong, like dying flowers or spoiled cologne. You get dizzy. You see two of the mannequin heads blink. You blink back. Eventually, Madame Moreau enters. She doesn't go near the mercury. She stands in the doorway, observing like a scientist watching lab mice. The fumes inspire a certain creativity, she says, mostly to herself. The disorientation sharpens the instincts, she smiles faintly. You're not sure if it's pride or pity. Then she leaves. Claudette joins you, glove-free, wiping her hands on her apron. He used to be my replacement, she says, nodding at the boy. Before they brought me back. Back from where? She shrugs. Doesn't matter. You continue polishing, trying to focus, trying not to fall into the swirl of nausea. The boy suddenly begins reciting hat measurements. 16 inches, 7.2 curve, 4-finger depth. Over and over, like a prayer. You escape the room just before you throw up. You splash cold water on your face, only to discover the water basin is full of pins. Thousands of them. Rusted. Bloody. One of them wiggles slightly. You step back. After a minute, Claudette joins you. You get used to it, she says, trying her hands on something that might once have been a veil. Or you stop noticing. In the afternoon, you're assigned to hatband duty, a supposedly simple job which means it's likely cursed. You spend 2 hours trying to stitch a perfect pleat, while your vision swims and your tongue tastes like coins. Delphine casually mentions that 2 of the former Mercury boys now work at a nearby clock shop. They're brilliant, she says, but they can't feel their fingers. You pause. Does that help with precision? No idea, she replies, but it does keep them from noticing the burns. The debate about Mercury's effect goes on. Some say it enhances creativity before it kills you. Others argue the madness is just what's always lived inside milliners, unlocked by fumes and expectations. Historians still argue whether any of the 19th century French hatmakers managed to die peacefully in their sleep. You doubt it. Back in the main room, Madame is holding a private fitting for a duchess. You're not allowed in, but you glimpse the woman through the curtain. Powdered, brittle, wrapped in black netting like a very expensive wasp. She wants a hat that says, "Dignified Despair," Annius whispers. You wonder what your hat says about you. Probably exhaustion laced with panic. The Mercury room is closed for the night, sealed with a cloth marked with an X. Inside, the boy continues polishing, alone, still humming. As you sweep the hallway, you notice a small, dusty drawer labelled "Unclaimed." Inside, buttons, feathers, a ribbon with a name stitched in trembling cursive. Celestine. You don't know a Celestine. No one does. You tuck the ribbon into your pocket just in case it remembers you. That night, your dreams are strange. You float through the Mercury room, guided by the sound of hat pins clicking against porcelain. Camille the mannequin walks beside you, her face blank, her hands full of feathers. You ask her where you're going. She says nothing. But the ribbon in your pocket begins to burn. You wake up gasping, still in your apron, thread in your hair, and somehow, a drop of mercury on your lip. The next morning you swear the air is heavier. Not just damp, but weighted, like someone draped velvet over the entire building during the night. Even the door creaks slower as you enter. You reach up instinctively to rub your lip, still tasting metal, still wondering if that mercury drop from your dream was real. Spoiler, it probably was. You walk into the workshop and for once no one is speaking. No mutters, no needle humming, not even the usual ritual of fake coughing to delay the first stitch. The air is thick with waiting. Then it begins. Snip, a single scissor slice. It echoes, and with it, the day's rhythm erupts like a symphony in slow motion. Snips, threads, sighs, and the shuffle of skirts as girls adjust positions, posture, proximity to heat or hierarchy. In Madame Moreau's shop, silence is never real silence. It's just the overture. You're assigned to veils today. Specifically, shrouded mourning-style veils, floor-length, jet black, trimmed in whispers. You're told the veil must drip like grief, but breathe like linen. Right, because you definitely studied emotional airflow at finishing school. You pin your work to the board. Annies glides by and says, "Pin lower. Grief starts at the throat, not the brow." You nod, because sure, that makes total sense now. Behind you, Madame clears her throat. You freeze. Her voice is a low glide. "Tell me what this veil says." You panic. You blurt, "Restraint," with a hint of vengeance. A pause. Then, "Acceptable." She moves on. You nearly faint. Claudette whispers, "Don't push it." Last week someone said, "Quiet despair," and ended up unstitching hems for 3 days straight. You don't need more threats. Your fingers are already screaming. You poke yourself 3 times before the hour ends. One of those pricks bleeds onto a ribbon. You fold it inside the seam. No one will know. Except you. And maybe Camille. She's standing in a new spot today, by the mirror. Her hat's changed again. It's now the morning veil you're making. You do not look at her again. By mid-morning, Madame starts inspecting everyone's progress. Her commentary is low, fast, and slicing. Too stiff. Too cheerful. This one looks like a taxidermy accident. And then, Delphine's hat. Madame stops, tilts her head. The hat is a small, exquisite cloche. It glimmers subtly in the lamplight, the beadwork forming a crescent moon across the brim. "This," Madame murmurs, "tells a story." She leans in. "Whose story is it?" Delphine's hand trembles. "My sister's," she whispers. Madame nods. Nothing more. The approval lingers in the air like rare perfume. We all inhale it, but it's short-lived, because next comes the pinned list. Every week, Madame posts a list on the back wall. It includes names, tasks, and, worst of all, placements. The seating chart, so to speak. Where you sit determines everything. Who you overhear, who critiques your work, who silently sabotages your thread stash. You check the list. Your name has moved. To table 1. You blink. This is serious. Table 1 is closest to Madame. It's also where orders from clients of distinction are handled. Royalty, diplomats, the ladies who pretend not to notice the mercury stains but absolutely do. As you pack up your station, Claudette catches your eye. "You've been chosen," she whispers. "For what?" She just shakes her head. We never really know. You sit at table 1. The wood is smoother. The pins are sharper. The scissors feel heavier, like they know secrets. Madame brings you a box. Inside, a half-completed bonnet trimmed in dove-grey silk and seed pearls. No instruction. Just a folded paper with a name, Madame de Fontaine. Careful, Anais murmurs. She has opinions and husbands. You begin your work. The silk is moody, the pearls slippery. You stitch and unstitch. You whisper to the fabric. It whispers back. Probably just the fumes. Probably. Around midday, Delphine drops her scissors. A tiny thing, but everyone looks. Madame turns. Have we lost our grip? She asks, voice cold. Delphine bends down, retrieves the scissors. She says nothing. Madame glides over, inspects the project. A hat for a diplomat's wife. White lace, stiff netting, a band of embroidered violets. She lifts it, examines the inner band. Why are their initials stitched here? She asks. Delphine swallows. She asked me to. Did she? Madame's voice sharpens. Did she also ask for the Latin phrase stitched beneath? Everyone stops. Latin. You lean slightly. The hat's lining has been inscribed with Sic transit gloria mundi. Thus passes the glory of the world. Madame's smile is brittle. Poetry or protest? Delphine's face drains. I thought it was a sentiment. For mourning. Madame studies her. It's an opinion. And opinions are not part of our product. Delphine doesn't return to her seat that afternoon. No one speaks of it. Someone new takes her place by morning. At day's end, you're cleaning a bin of silk remnants when you find something odd. A feather. Pale grey. Translucent. Not stiff like the others. It glows slightly when turned toward the lamp. You show it to Claudette. She stares. That's from the nightbird bonnet. What's that? She hesitates. It's not made anymore. It's ceremonial. You wait. She adds. It's worn only when a shop girl dies in her post. You look back at the feather. It pulses in your hand. You drop it. The workroom feels colder now. And Camille? She's wearing black again. You try to ignore Camille, but she's facing your table now. You're certain of it. The mannequin, once just a silent frame for velvet and thread, has tilted ever so slightly like she's watching. Not with eyes, but with judgment. Still, you press on. Today's assignment is different. Not a commission. Not a rehearsal hat for a duchess's dog. Yes, that happens. But a fitting. A real live model. Except she doesn't look entirely alive. She arrives around mid-morning, swept in with the cold wind from the alley. The bell above the door jangles once, long and low. Her entrance silences the shop, even the snipping scissors and muttered critiques. Everything halts. She's tall, angular, dressed in all black. Veil, gloves, gown. The fabric doesn't rustle. It whispers. Her movements are slow, liquid, like she's being pulled forward by gravity and something else. And though you can't quite see her face beneath the gauze, there's something about her that feels more sculpture than person. Madame Dubois, Madame Moreau says, voice suddenly very soft, not reverent, wary. Madame Dubois doesn't reply. She simply glides toward Camille and then past her, right to your table. You don't move, you can't. Madame gestures. She would like you to pin the veil she's commissioned. 5th morning, discretion with texture. You nod, with effort. You lift the veil, handmade lace, soft as spiderwebs, interwoven with threads so fine they shimmer only when you look away. There's a faint scent on it. Not perfume, something older. Church candles, maybe, or grave lilies. You reach toward Madame Dubois with the pins. She leans slightly. You hesitate, because her skin is pale, not ivory pale, waxy pale, like she's been preserved, embalmed in melancholy. You gently part the veil and pin it to her hat. The lace rests against her cheek. She does not blink. You work quickly, each pin tremulous in your hand. One drop of sweat slides from your brow onto her glove. She does not react. She doesn't even breathe. You finally step back. Madame Dubois turns once toward the mirror. Then slowly her head tilts. Once. Slightly. Madame Moreau nods. That's the cue. She's satisfied. The room seems to exhale. As Madame Dubois glides out, the door closes behind her with an unnatural click. Someone whispers, she's had that hat commissioned every year since 1867. Annius adds. Historians still argue whether she died that year, or just decided to mourn so intensely she became part of the mourning. You shiver. Someone else mutters, I swear she left footprints. But they've vanished. You look. The floor is dry. Your hands are still shaking as you return to your table. Claudette leans in. Did you touch her skin? You nod. She sucks her teeth. Oof, good luck with that. The day goes on, but no one's really recovered. Even Camille seems a little stiff, if that's possible for someone who's already a mannequin. You notice her head is back to facing the window, her hat now different again. A thick velvet toque with netting stitched in what looks suspiciously like handwriting. You don't investigate. Instead, you're tasked with trim recovery, finding usable pieces from the shop's enormous crate of discarded ribbons, feathers, and fragments. It's a purgatory task. You pick through tangled lace and thread ends, occasionally uncovering something valuable. A strip of royal crepe, a velvet ribbon with Brock embroidery, a nearly complete veil torn straight down the centre. You hand that last one to Madame. She barely glances at it. Too theatrical, even for grief. By mid-afternoon, the workshop is filled with whispers again. This time it's about the Countess. She ordered a hat with a pocket. A pocket? Inside the brim, for notes. What kind of notes? No one asks, but everyone speculates. Love letters, blackmail, grocery lists for poisons. You wonder if your stitching will one day hold a secret so tightly no one knows it's there. Then someone laughs. Remember the corset that caused a duel? You perk up. Claudette grins. It had 2 names stitched into the seams, one on each side. Husband found both. Historians still argue whether it was a love triangle or a poorly planned prank. You try to imagine the scene. 2 men fencing in the street, feathers flying, corset held aloft like a flag of war. Then you remember you're holding a veil that still smells faintly of mothballs and regret. Reality sinks back in. Toward the end of the day, Madame holds a brief critique session. You present your work from earlier. A mourning bonnet trimmed in dual textures, soft chiffon to evoke memory, firm braid to represent resolve. She studies it, traces the seam with one long ink-stained finger, and says, "The structure is too hopeful." You blink. "Hopeful," she clarifies. "You've left room for air. Mourning doesn't breathe. It drowns." You nod. Then you go back and tighten everything. The veil now clings to the hat like sorrow clings to a widow who knows he had it coming. Madame says nothing, but she doesn't correct you either. As you clean up for the night, you notice Camille again. She's holding something. You're certain of it. A hat pin. Not there before. Long, silver, pointed, facing down, like a warning. You don't say anything. You just dim the lamps, whisper goodnight, and hope tomorrow's model is at least warm. The next day begins with a whisper, not the metaphorical kind, an actual whisper. You hear it before your boots even touch the threshold. Lace from Antwerp, hidden in hems, you freeze just inside the door. Contraband corsets, hem codes. The whisper again from deeper inside the shop. You follow the sound, not because you're brave, but because curiosity is stronger than fear. Or maybe you're just tired of being confused. You pass through the curtain into the back fitting room, empty. The whisper is gone, but someone's been here. A bonnet rests on the mannequin in the corner, one you haven't seen before. It's modest, black, trimmed in forget-me-not embroidery so tiny you almost miss the message stitched into the edge. A single word, upside down, Lisette. You don't know any Lisette, but you've heard the name, once, in a whisper. On your second day, when the girl in the lavender apron muttered, "Don't use a thimble, that's Lisette's," and then didn't explain. Later that morning, Annius corners you between the thread drawers and the steam iron. You saw the bonnet. You nod. She leans in. Lisette used to work here. She was the best at smuggling. Smuggling? Lace? Belgian? Illegal? You blink. Why lace? Annie shrugs. Because it fits in hems, and because it's worth more than opium when it's the right lace. You stare. She coded messages in it. Corsets with secret pockets. Veils with stitched warnings. There was even one petticoat that told someone how to escape the city. You laugh. That can't be real. Annies doesn't laugh back. Historians still argue whether she was a patriot, a criminal, or just very good at multitasking. You ask what happened to her. Annie says nothing. just walks away. You spend the next hour looking at every stitch differently. Is this just trim? Or a code? The paranoia is subtle, then constant. Every swish of skirt, every flick of ribbon feels like it's carrying a secret. Even your own hatband feels heavier than it should. Claudette catches you inspecting your work. "Relax," she says. "You'd know if you were carrying something. It hums." You laugh again. She doesn't. She adds, "But don't remove anything. If it's there, it's meant to be." "Right." You return to your station. A small box has been placed on your table. No note, no label. Inside, a handful of antique buttons, a single black feather, and a length of unusually stiff taffeta. You run your fingers along it. There's something inside. You unroll it carefully. A folded parchment. In ink faded to amber it reads, "For the girl who listens." The Countess's corset was not the only one. You look around, no one's watching, you refold it and burn it. Later that day, Madame calls you into her office, a cramped chamber behind the velvet curtain. You've never been invited in. The walls are lined with sketches, unfinished hats, and bolts of fabric too fine to touch. She gestures toward a headpiece on her desk. A mourning cap, but not for wear. "For shipment," she says. "To Marseille. Our friend in the port will collect it." You nod. You are to finish the inner lining, seamless, no initials, no mistakes. You feel the weight in her words. The cap is heavier than it should be. You stitch. Each seam a silence, each thread a binding. Claudette waits outside as you exit, holding a parcel. "Seam check," she says, "but you know it's a decoy. She's just making sure you're still you." That night, as the girls tidy the final threads and snuff the lamps, Claudette tells you the corset story in full. "Not just a jewel," she says, "a coded lining. It named 3 nobles, 2 of them already dead." "Why?" She shrugs. "Revenge, or vanity, or maybe both. Women's clothing hides everything but intention." You smile faintly. "And the man who duelled?" "Still comes by sometimes, buys gloves, pretends he doesn't know what a hem can hold." Before you leave, you check the mannequin Camille again. She's wearing nothing, just a corset. Its seams, double-stitched, and at the edge of the mirror in pin-sized handwriting, "Lisette lives." You do not sleep well. By now you've stopped trying to rationalize what happens in this shop. The whispers, the dreams, the mannequin's rotating wardrobe, it all just is, like the smell of starch in the morning, or the steady ache in your lower back. Reality here is measured in ribbons and rumours, but tonight you're staying late. Very late. The shop has been commissioned to produce a dozen bridal bonnets for a fast-approaching noble wedding, and Madame Moreau has decided it's the perfect opportunity to test your endurance under duress. You're not alone. Anaïs, Claudette, and 2 other girls, Henriette and Solange, are also sentenced to the midnight millinery shift. You half expect to be handed a lantern and a bell. The gaslights dim early, leaving just candlelight and the rustle of fabric. There's something intimate about it, like you're stitching inside a cathedral, whispering to God through thread. And then come the mice. They arrive with the kind of audacity only city rodents have, darting between the table legs, scuttling behind hat boxes, squeaking indignantly when someone drops a spool. Anaïs hurls a pincushion. It misses. The mouse does not care. Solange yelps. "One just tried to nest in my braid," Claudette snorts. "Consider it an artistic collaboration." You laugh, despite yourself. Exhaustion does strange things to your sense of humour. Around midnight the air grows still. The candles flicker but hold. You've just finished beading the edge of a lace veil when you hear it. Click. Not the usual sound of scissors or thread. Something heavier, hollow, from the storage room. You look at the others. Henriette freezes. Solange stops breathing. Annie lowers her head like she already knows. Claudette just says, "Here we go." You follow the sound. The hallway to the storage room is long at night. Longer than usual. You pass shelves lined with mannequin heads, all facing slightly away as if trying to pretend they don't see you. One of them, you swear, smirks. You reach the door. It's ajar. Inside, shadows. Bolts of fabric loom like forgotten ghosts, stiff and pale in the dark. The air smells of dust, lavender, and something faintly sweet like rotting violets. And then you see it. The mannequin. Not Camille. A different one. One no one remembers bringing in. It stands in the corner, half dressed in a muslin test cap. No eyes, no limbs, just a form. a suggestion of a woman. A hatbox sits at her feet. It opens, on its own. You don't scream, but your knees forget how to exist for a moment. Inside the hatbox is a single bonnet, black velvet, crimson ribbon, no lace, just one phrase stitched inside the brim. Ce n'est pas fini. This is not the end. You back away, slowly, carefully. Back in the workroom, Claudette is sewing like nothing happened. She doesn't look up. Did it open for you? You nod. She nods too. Then you're marked now. For what? Annius glances up. For knowing. You don't ask what. You already know better. You return to your bonnet. It's just silk and thread, you tell yourself. Just stitches. Just work. But your needle feels heavier. The ribbon trembles when you pick it up. Someone hums. No one admits it. Around 3 a.m, Henriette starts crying. No one comforts her. This is normal. Solange drops her thimble. It rolls under Camille's table. She doesn't retrieve it. Claudette brews a tiny pot of coffee over the lamp. It tastes like mud and memory, but you drink it anyway. It helps you forget the mannequin for 5 minutes. By dawn, only 2 bonnets are finished. The others lie in various states of grief and collapse. Madame arrives at 6 on the dot. She surveys the room, the girls, the mouse still nibbling a hem, and says, "Not your worst night," which is praise. Sort of. As you drag yourself to your coat, Camille is now facing the window again, wearing the black velvet bonnet from the storage room. You close your eyes and whisper to no one, "It's not the end." By now, you don't flinch when doors creak or mannequins shift slightly in your peripheral vision. You don't question why every needle in the drawer is bent exactly the same way, or why there's always one extra hat on the inventory list, even when no one remembers making it. It's not just about hats anymore, it's about debts. And today, yours begins. You're told, without warning, to assist with ledger duty. This is unusual. The ledgers are sacred. Kept behind lock and lace in Madame Moreau's private alcove, they are never left open on counters, never updated without supervision, and absolutely never altered without permission. So when she hands you the keys and tells you, "Balance the orders from last season," you feel the floor shift slightly beneath your boots. The ledgers are thicker than you expect. Bound in cracked leather, the pages smell of dust, dye, and something darker, like iron filings or dried roses. You settle in by the rear window, sunlight soft against your back, and begin to decipher the entries. It's not simple. Names are written in codes, client aliases, measurements hidden in riddles. One line reads simply, "Swan, black, 2 tiers, 6 stitches." That could be a hat, a payment, or a warning. You copy the lines into the fresh ledger as instructed, until you notice the pattern. Every 7th page includes a mark, a tiny stitched X made with real thread, sewn directly into the parchment. Who does that? You investigate further. Each of those pages corresponds to a name that's now crossed out, faded, or gone entirely, like it was never written. You ask Claudette. She shrugs. Those are debts. Financial. She gives you a look. Not exactly, she explains. When a girl reaches a certain level of trust, she's offered a family tie, an unspoken agreement. You become a Moreau girl, for life. That comes with protection, prestige, and obligations. Blood debts, Annius whispers from behind you. Literal, Annius just smiles. Later, Madame calls you into the back office again. Her hands are ink-stained, her gaze sharp. "There was an error in the books," she says. "A date." You panic. I copied it exactly as it was." She nods. "Exactly as it was, which is not how it should be." She slides a page toward you. March 14th, 1842. You stare at it. "That's the day of the fire," you murmur. "The warehouse?" Madame raises a brow. The great hat shop fire of 1842 consumed half of Rue Saint-Dominique, destroyed 3 ateliers, and took 7 lives. Officially. Unofficially, many believe it was sabotage, either industrial espionage or retribution for unpaid debts. Historians still argue whether the blaze started in the dye room or beneath the floorboards of a rival. "That fire," Madame says, "reset the balance for a time." You blink. What balance? But she's already turned away. You are dismissed. Back at your station, you find a slip of paper pinned to your workboard. A name, Juliet R. A sum, dial 200 francs. A note. Begin collection through design. You stare. Juliet R. is a client. R. is a recurring one. You recognise the initials from several hat commissions. A widow's pillbox, a travelling bonnet, a velvet ribbon set with small sapphires. You ask Claudette, "What does it mean, collect through design?" She sighs. "It means you craft a message, a reminder, something in the trim, the weight, the colour, something only she will understand. That she owes something?" Claudette nods. "Or that she's running out of time?" You don't want to get it wrong, but you have no choice. You begin. The hat must be structured but soft, like an invitation dressed as a warning. You use dove-grey silk, the colour of uncertain skies. You add just 3 seed pearls, not 4. 4 is for funerals. You stitch the brim in a spiralled pattern, not quite symmetrical, like something slowly unravelling. Inside the lining you leave a single stitch unknotted. The thread hangs, loose, obvious, but not to the untrained eye. The message is sent. Later that day, Madame inspects the piece. Her fingers hover over the brim, her eyes unreadable. She says only, "It's subtle, she'll know." You breathe. You've completed your first ledger task. Congratulations, you are now complicit. That night, you dream of thread wrapping around your wrists, pulling tighter with every stitch. You wake up to find a needle under your pillow, not yours. The next morning begins not with thread or orders, but accusation. The bell above the front door shrieks instead of rings, and in storms a woman of considerable height and considerably more ego, wrapped in taffeta, perfumed in rage, a countess. You can tell by her gait alone, half swan, half battle march. She's not pleased. "My plume," she hisses before even removing her gloves. "Gone." Every girl freezes. Plumes are no small matter here, especially ostrich plumes, especially her ostrich plume. They're imported from Egypt, or sometimes Marseille if it's a good year, and dyed with pigments that would bankrupt a small country. They are trimmed by hand, steamed into curls, and fluffed like the dreams of debutantes. To misplace one is equivalent to treason. Madame Moreau appears without a sound. No rustle of skirt, no clearing of throat, just suddenly there. "Countess Valbonne," she says calmly. "You believe the plume was lost?" Valbonne turns slowly. Lost implies accident. This was theft. You feel the room subtly tilt toward you. You, the new girl? Because of course. It doesn't help that you were assigned to ribbon duty yesterday, and that your station is closest to the cabinet where the plumes are locked, usually. A cabinet that, this morning, is very slightly ajar. Madame's gaze is unreadable. The girls glance toward you, then away again. Claudette clears her throat, loudly. "I believe the plume was last seen with Henriette," she says delicately. Henriette goes pale. You blink. "No, it wasn't. I didn't see her." Anise kicks your boot under the table, hard. You stop. Something unsaid passes between Claudette and Madame, like a stitch tying one secret to another. The Countess fumes. "I expect it returned, or replaced, and if neither, repaid." She storms out. A silence settles, not relief, not dread, more like calculation. Later in the workroom, Claudette sidles up beside you. "You're welcome." You look at her, confused and not entirely grateful. She was going to choose you, automatically, because you're new. You freeze up under pressure, and frankly your face gives everything away. You cross your arms. "So you threw Henriette to the wolves?" "She's done worse," Anais mutters from her side. "She once used real client measurements on a gossip corset." You blink. "What's that?" "A corset designed to accidentally reveal who's been gaining weight at the opera." "Oh." She deserved a nudge. Henriette, for the record, says nothing all day, but when she leaves that night, you notice her basket is slightly heavier than usual. You think you see a tuft of grey plume peeking out. You say nothing, but Camille is facing her, watching. That evening, Madame calls you into the office again. You're getting used to the ritual, the cracked leather chair, the smell of wax and ink, the pile of unfinished bonnets in the corner like sleeping dogs. She slides a list toward you, client names, addresses, hat styles, next to each a number. You frown. "Debts?" She shakes her head. "No, deliveries." You feel yourself exhale. But, she adds, you'll observe the clients, quietly, take notes. You blink. On what? She folds her hands. How they respond, what they wear it with, who's with them, what they say. You realise suddenly, these aren't just deliveries, they're reconnaissance. You ask, why? She gives a small smile. Because hats are masks, and masks tell truths. You don't argue. You spend the next 2 days delivering. You learn quickly. Clients say more to a milliner's assistant than they do to their priest. One tells you she needs the netting longer, because he still looks at me. Another asks if the black trim could be a little less black, as if tone-shifting grief were a style choice. The third whispers, tell Madame I received the message, and I accept. You didn't include a message. You don't ask what she meant. You return with notes. Madame reads them, then files them away in a drawer marked Whispers. You're not allowed to ask. Back at the shop, Claudette corners you again. Next time, she says, watch the Countess's gloves. Why? She wears different ones depending on whether she intends to forgive or destroy. Millinery isn't just about hats. It's about hierarchies. You nod slowly. You're starting to understand. At closing, Madame pauses beside your table, says nothing, but places a single black button on your station. It's not decorative. It's symbolic. It means you're in. That night you notice your name has been added to the ledger, but not in ink, in thread. Deadlines in the hat shop are rarely polite. They don't whisper gently as they approach. They slam through the door like a jealous mistress, overturn the tea table and demand everyone's attention in a cloud of starch and panic. Today's deadline is one of the worst. 100 bonnets, 6 hours, one fire already. You arrive to smoke still lingering faintly in the back corridor. Someone, no one will admit who, overheated the velvet press, and the resulting puff of scorched fabric briefly filled the entire shop with the scent of cooked despair. Madame Moreau didn't yell. She just narrowed her eyes and ordered everyone to double pace. So here you are, sitting at a bench that's too small, next to a girl who smells like clove oil and desperation, stitching like your hands owe someone money. Because they do. Each hat is assigned a style code, but the codes keep changing. One order card says, Morning bonnets, style 4A, modest, not mournful. Another insists on 4A2, resigned but not rebellious. And someone from delivery drops off a note requesting a last-minute switch to 402B's quiet dignity with room for gossip. Anais mutters, they don't want hats, they want emotional armour. You don't disagree. You're on braid duty. Not exciting, but crucial. A badly stitched braid throws off the entire balance of a bonnet, like giving a lion a clown nose. Your needle dances as fast as you can manage, but your fingers are swollen, your eyes gritty from too much candlelight and too little sleep. Across the table, Solange begins to sing softly, a lullaby in Breton, eerie and sweet. Her voice curls around the gaslight like smoke. Claudette leans over. Don't let her get to the part with the drowned child. It throws off the tension in the netting. You work faster. In our 3, a ribbon catches fire. It's not a big fire, barely a flicker. But in this shop where everything is made of lace tulle and volatile ambition, even a spark is a threat. Anais leaps up and slaps it out with a bolt of satin. No screams, no panic, just swift practiced response. This has clearly happened before. Madame enters seconds later, surveying the scorch mark on the floor. She says nothing. But from that moment on, everyone works with wet cloths nearby. By hour 4, girls are falling asleep mid-stitch. You're handed a cup of black tea so bitter it tastes like disappointment itself. Claudette pours something from a small bottle into hers. What is that? Survival. You don't ask further. The room becomes a hive of murmured mantras. 3 loops not, 3 loops not. Brim then band, brim then band. I am not crying. I am just allergic to rush orders. You stab yourself again, twice, before you even finish hat number 32. You barely feel it anymore. Madame passes behind your table. You don't see her, but the air grows sharper, charged like static on velvet. She pauses, plucks your unfinished bonnet from your hands, turns it once in the light, then sets it down. She says only, "This will pass," and then moves on. No one knows if that was encouragement or a threat. By hour 5 you enter a trance state. The thread moves, the fabric bends, your fingers seem to float. You no longer think in words, only shapes, seams, pleats. Every mistake is erased before it happens. You begin to understand what it means to disappear into the stitch. Claudette watches you for a moment. You're in the fold now, you blink. The fold? The place we go when it's too much, the place inside the needle, where you either find clarity or vanish completely. The room is full of girls in various stages of vanishing. At hour 6, as the final bell rings, the last bonnet is complete. 100 hats, stacked, steamed, staring. You stand to stretch, and every bone in your body protests. Even your hair hurts. Madame re-enters. She surveys the hats. She does not smile, but she nods. And the tension lifts, just slightly. The apprentices scatter like birds, fluttering towards sleep and soup, and, if they're lucky, a dream without feathers. You're left to help sweep. As you do, you notice one bonnet is different. Not in shape, not in style, in weight. You lift it. There's something inside. You reach in carefully. Your fingers close around a folded note stitched to the lining with a red thread. She knows. She remembers. Burn this. You do not know who it's for, but you burn it. No hesitation. Camille is wearing a veil again when you leave. You don't remember her being dressed at all that morning. You lower your eyes. You don't want to know what she's mourning. Not tonight. Paris is rotting. Not just metaphorically, though the back alleys and salons are full of slow betrayals and whispered deaths. No, literally the city stinks. It's August and the sewers are rising. The cholera has returned. You smell it the moment you step outside. Lye and lard soap trying desperately to mask decay. Even the hats you carry to delivery now include sachets of crushed lavender and mint. An effort to keep the sickness at bay through scent, which doesn't work, but makes people feel better. Like hats, really. Inside the shop, the mood has shifted. Today's orders are all for mourning veils. You've never seen this many. The requests come from every district, rich and poor alike. Some want full drapes in black tulle, others half-length styles trimmed in black jet beads. One girl even asks for a veil with a drawstring so she can cinch it tighter when passing particularly reckless street corners. Madame Moreau simply calls it the wave. No one says the word cholera, but it hovers, and the hats respond. Claudette tells you how it was during the last outbreak. No colour, no feathers, just netting and prayers. Anise nods. One woman asked for a veil with room to hide a vial of vinegar, for dabbing her gloves, as protection. Historians still argue whether vinegar-soaked cloth actually stopped the plague from spreading. Probably not, but it gave people the illusion of control. That's what millinery is, really. Disaster management through ornament. You're assigned to edging. It's not glamorous, but it's where meaning lives. The edge of a veil tells you everything. How recent the grief is, how public, how socially dangerous. A jagged edge is considered disrespectful. A double fold? That's for someone who lost 2 people in the same household. You're working on a particularly complex fold when a messenger stumbles into the shop. Young, panting, wild-eyed. He holds out a package. It's already been opened. Inside, a hat. Yours. One of the deliveries from earlier in the week. It was made for a Madame Lefebvre. Simple, elegant, grey, silk trim. Now it's shredded. Not by accident. The brim has been torn apart, the lining cut open, and inside, tucked just beneath the inner band, a slip of paper. You sent the wrong message. You freeze. Madame walks over, takes one look, and nods. "I'll speak to her," she says. Her tone says she won't. Instead, she picks up the hat, tosses it in the fire bin and hands you a new block. "Try again," she says, and this time, grief with discretion. You nod. Your hands shake. That afternoon, Henriette faints at her station. No warning. She simply folds sideways, collapsing into a pile of veils. No one screams. Anise and Claudette lift her by the arms. Her forehead is slick with sweat. Madame orders her carried to the back room, the one with the dye pots and the useful bones jar. You never see her again. A week later, a new girl is introduced. Her name is Leonie. She says she came from a shop in Lyon. You've never heard of it. Madame has. "I trained her aunt," she says, which might be true, or might be a convenient lie to cover something Henriette-shaped. Leonie takes Henriette's seat. Her hands are very good with veils. No one talks about it. At lunch, you chew slowly through a crust of bread that tastes faintly of cloves. Claudette stirs her tea with a hat pin. Anais reads from a romance serial, and halfway through begins crying. No one comforts her. She's embroidering initials into a bonnet lining while she weeps. Whose? You ask. She doesn't answer. Later that day, the order board is updated. High-profile funeral. Need veils for 12 guests, 1 hour. It's absurd. It's impossible. You all do it anyway. You work so fast your fingers blur. You stitch netting so fine it might as well be spider silk. You sew in black pearls, single knots, invisible seams. At the last minute, a note arrives. Include a spare. For the widow's sister. Unannounced, Claudette sighs. Always the sister. Always last minute. You finish the veil in record time, you fold it, you send it off, and you don't breathe again until the messenger is out of sight. That night, you clean up late. You're alone. You sweep the floor under Camille. She's wearing a cholera veil. The same style you made, the same fold. But hers is torn. You crouch, heart hammering, and lift the hem of the veil, stitched in white thread, barely visible. You sent the right message, but too late. You don't sleep, because now you know someone is watching your stitches, and they're not just reading style, they're reading secrets. There's a mirror in the back hallway. You've passed it dozens of times, barely noticed it. Just an old rectangle of warped silver glass hung between 2 empty hat stands. But this morning, as you hurry past on your way to retrieve a spool of widow's black, something catches your eye, your reflection. Your winks. You freeze. No, not you. The you in the mirror. A flicker. The briefest twitch of a smile. Gone the moment you blink. You stand there for a long time, staring. The mirror stares back. Anais appears beside you, holding a bundle of crinoline. Don't linger near the mercury mirror, she says. You turn. What? She jerks her chin toward the glass. They used mercury to silver the backing. It leaks, and it remembers. You scoff weakly. Remembers what? Claudette joins in from the end of the hallway without breaking stride. Everyone who's worked here too long. You both disappear into the workroom. You remain, staring. The surface ripples. You tell yourself it's just glass. Later that morning, you're assigned to polish detail. Again, which means more time near the mercury-treated felt hats. And of course, the mirror. Madame brings you a tray of half-finished pieces and a small bottle of clear liquid. Not water, she says. Do not spill it. She doesn't say what it is. You polish in silence, breathing shallow, trying to avoid the sweet metallic smell that now seems embedded in your lungs. As you lift the 5th hat to inspect the underside of the brim, you notice something odd. A small series of pinpricks along the lining. Not damage, deliberate. You trace them with your thumb, there's a rhythm to them. Dots, lines, dashes. Morse code? You've no idea how to read it, but the spacing is too intentional to ignore. You stitch it back closed and say nothing. That evening you sneak into the ledger room. You're not supposed to be there, but the door is open. Inside, the air is dry and brittle. The ledgers sleep on their shelves like old lions, heavy and unreadable unless approached with respect. You open the one marked apprentice accounts, 1830-1860. Inside, you find the name Lisette, circled in red thread, and a note. Transmitted code via brimstitch. Confirmed. You shut the book slowly. Lisette was real. Lisette was... and she used hats to communicate. But to whom? And what did it cost? Back in the workshop, Madame calls for you. You brace for critique. Instead, she gestures toward a hat box on her desk. It's pale cream, banded in gold. Open it! Inside, a hat. Not black, not mourning, a wedding bonnet. Not just any wedding bonnet, a royal one. Princess Hélène de Montferrand is marrying next week, Madame says. Her family has requested our house. I am assigning you the lining. You nearly choke. The royal wedding is all anyone's talked about for weeks. Political gossip, social tension, dress speculation. This isn't just a hat. It's a statement, and you've been chosen. Why me? You ask honestly. Madame smiles. Because you've stopped asking the wrong questions. You don't know whether to be honoured or terrified. Probably both. You work all night. The fabric is satin so smooth it defies pins. The lace is antique. Italian, possibly Spanish. Rumoured to have once belonged to a duchess who fled her wedding on horseback. The veil is long enough to hide a betrayal. As you begin stitching the lining, you notice something strange. The needle moves. differently. It guides your hand. No, really, it guides you. You try to pull back, but the stitches continue, your hand moving faster than your thoughts. By the time you stop, you've sewn a spiral, not planned, not requested. A spiral in white-on-white thread, invisible unless held up to the light. You show Claudette. She studies it, tilts her head, then quietly says, "That's a known symbol. Secret society. Seamstress's circle." You blink. "That's not real," she shrugs. "Historians still argue." You ask what it means. She says, "Protection or protest. Depends on the direction of the spiral." You look down. You don't remember which way it spun. Later that night, the mercury mirror is covered. A cloth hangs over it now. No explanation. But as you walk past, you feel warmth radiating from behind the fabric, like breath. And in your pocket a stitch loosens. Just one. You don't touch it. You just keep walking, because you have work to do. The shop is vibrating. Not literally, of course. But there's a tension in the floorboards, in the candle flames that lean just a little too far, in the breath-holding that spreads from apprentice to apprentice. Because the Royal Commission isn't just important, it is dangerous. When you sew a bonnet for a duchess and she hates it, she'll gossip. When you sew for a princess and she hates it, she'll have someone replaced. Quietly. Madame Moreau is on edge. Her silk gloves are back on, a rare sign that she's masking her hands, and not just because of the cold. They say her fingers have scars from a duel with a rival milliner, fought with scissors behind the Palais Garnier. Historians still argue whether it was over a design or a betrayal. Maybe both. Your hands, she tells you without looking, must be as precise as your silence. No pressure. Today's task, the veil. Not the cheap kind stitched for middle-class grief. This is a ceremonial veil. It must convey youth, dignity, and loyalty, but not passion. Passion is unbecoming of a royal bride. You're told this explicitly. You're given rare white lace with gold filaments so fine you barely see them unless they catch firelight. A second girl is assigned to oversee your measurements, not to help, to observe. Royal commissions always involve a minder, in case you get clever. "You'll want the embroidery to end here," Claudette says softly, guiding your hand. "Just above the temple, symbolic protection." "From what?" She pauses. "Public scrutiny and assassins, one or the other." While you work, Annius arrives with new feathers, long, slender, silver-dipped. "Not peacock," she whispers, too boastful. You nod. You've already stitched, unstitched, and restitched the brim 3 times, purely from nerves. You nearly sew through your own cuff. The royal chamberlain stops by mid-morning. He's a pale man in darker velvet, and he doesn't walk so much as hover. He asks no questions, just inspects, sniffs once, nods once, then says, "The princess requests a message." You all freeze. She wants a detail sewn into the veil, hidden, meaningful. He produces a note, folded, sealed with wax. It reads only, "One day she will be queen. Let her know we see her." Madame reads it, doesn't flinch. She turns to you. "You'll do it." "Of course you will. Now you must sew a secret into the veil, something subtle, something elegant, a pattern, a stitch, a fold, a warning, a blessing. You're not told. That's the beauty of it." You choose a motif, small laurel leaves embroidered in near-invisible thread, spiralling from temple to crown. From a distance they blend with the veil. Up close they're unmistakable, a symbol of quiet strength. Claudette watches, nods. She'll notice. You hope that's enough. But even now you feel something off. Not with the veil, with the shop. There's a smell, sharp, acrid. Glue, smoke. And then it happens. A shriek, loud, inhuman. You and 3 others race toward the back of the shop where the dye kettles are kept. The fire is already crawling up the wall, hissing over the shelf of ribbons. Someone, Leonie, throws water. It hisses. Claudette rips a bolt of damp muslin from a laundry basket and starts beating the flames. You join in. Your hands blister from the steam. The room becomes a battlefield of smoke, ash, and falling hat boxes. You hear Madame Moreau shouting orders over the chaos, calm and precise. Move the velvet bolts, protect the wedding lace. You drag a crate of mourning trims out of the way as Solange stamps out a fire crawling along the floor. Smoke fills your lungs. You cough and cough. Your knees buckle, but finally it's out. Silence returns. The room is scorched, but intact. One girl cries softly, another vomits into a bucket. Madame surveys the damage. Her gloves are now gone, her hands are streaked with soot. Then she walks directly to you. "You saved the veil," she says. It isn't a question. You nod. She looks you in the eye, for once without a veil of her own. You've passed. You don't know what that means. Not yet. But that night your station is cleaned, polished. A new chair appears, a cushion, even a new pin tray. And on the wall above your space, a small silver plaque with your initials, M.E.A. You didn't ask for it, but it's there. You're now a permanent stitch in the fabric of the house. You notice Camille that evening wearing a tiara, a wedding veil, yours, and you know, without being told, the message was received. You dream of ash that night. Not fire, just ash, falling gently through the air like dirty snow. It lands on your apron, your thread, the curve of a bonnet brim. You reach out to brush it away, but it clings, and then softly a voice. The hem burns last. You wake before dawn, your fingers twitching as though still stitching in your sleep. The shop is quiet when you arrive, a little too quiet. Claudette greets you at the door, eyes rimmed with fatigue. "The new girl fainted," she says. No preamble, no hello. "What happened?" "She leaned too close to the candle tray," Anais adds, joining with a tray of needles. "Collapsed right into it." You blink. "Is she—" "She'll be fine," Claudette says. "Or not. It's not really our call." You find out later the new girl's name was Edith. She'd been there 3 weeks. Young. Good with pleats, bad with posture. They say she dropped mid-thread and didn't scream, just exhaled like she was done. The candle tray flared, scorched half a table, and set a bolt of morning net aflame. It took 3 girls and a veil to beat the flames out. They used the veil because it was closest. They kept it because it worked. Madame keeps that veil now, hung above the back door like a smoke-stained saint. No one questions it. Today, there is no stitching. Not at first, there's scrubbing. Madame declares the back workroom unclean. Not just from the fire, but from the energy, the mood, the drip of despair. So, out come the buckets, the bristle brushes, the old vinegar and lavender solution that stings your eyes and haunts your dreams. You're assigned to corners, which means knees on tile, hands raw from soap, and the occasional close encounter with spiders that look unusually well fed. "You're not scrubbing fabric," Claudette says from behind a pail. "You're scrubbing memory." You pause. "Does that work?" She shrugs. "Only if the memory wants to go." Halfway through the day, Solange finds a scorched pin tucked between floorboards. Not just any pin. One of the silver ceremonial hat pins used only for high commissions. She turns it over in her palm, frowns. There's something etched on it. You peer closer, a single word barely visible. Encore. Again. You both look at each other. Anais leans in. That's a request. A request for what? Continuation. Or revenge. Historians still argue, Claudette adds unhelpfully. You place the pin in the candle tray, just in case. By late afternoon, the scrubbing ends. You're exhausted in new ways, bones heavy, muscles trembling. Madame surveys the room, nods once, then says, "We begin again." No drama, no speech, just stitching. The task. Replicate the wedding veil. Not for the princess. This one is symbolic. A shot pattern, a keepsake, a gesture. She assigns you to lead. You panic, but you nod. You begin. Claudette joins you. So does Anais. Even Solange takes a seat. You spread the pattern. You divide the lace. You assign the motifs. Laurel, pearl, shadow stitching. You find that your hands no longer shake. By nightfall, the veil is almost complete. It's not exactly the same, but that's the point. This one carries memory of fire, of sweat, of a girl who fainted with a needle in her hand. You add a single gold stitch beneath the fold, not visible unless sought, just one, for Edith. No one speaks of it, but no one removes it. That night, Camille is bare. No veil, no bonnet, just standing, as though waiting. You pass her without looking, because you understand now. Camille isn't a mannequin. She's a mirror, and she's waiting for your reflection to change. There's a letter tucked inside the brim of your stool the next morning. Not sealed, not addressed, just folded once, neatly. You find it while reaching for your spare thimble, right where the cushion sinks in slightly from weeks of quiet suffering. You unfold it slowly, half expecting another stitched warning. Instead, it's written in ink. Cursive, delicate, slightly faded. When the lace speaks, listen. When the bonnets multiply, follow the pattern. If you find the letter, it's your turn now. There's no signature. You look up. Camille is wearing a new hat. It wasn't there last night. Not finished. Just a frame. Brim stiff. Shape unfamiliar. And yet, you recognize it. The slope of the sides. The angle of the opening. The way it dips like a question. You made this, or you will. You hide the note in your pocket. Say nothing. The shop feels charged. Today's assignment is routine, at least on paper. Update the pattern archives. That means digging through old hat designs, measuring brims, cataloguing trims, matching each entry with a sketch and a written description. But the shop's archive is more crypt than cabinet. It's housed in a narrow padlocked room just off the dye cellar, a room no one enjoys entering, and fewer return from promptly. Madam hands you the key without a word. The lock clicks like a throat clearing. Inside, shelves, boxes, stacked ledgers labelled in fine calligraphy, 1880, plague ribbons, 1881, the corset incident, 1882, invalid bonnets. The air is stale, like lace left too long in a drawer. You're told to pull the lettered seamstress box, an old trunk marked with a stitched monogram, SS. Seamstress Society, Claudette whispers as she walks past. Is that real? You ask. Define real. You drag the trunk to your station. Inside, you find a collection of unfinished bonnets, each tagged with a note. Most are crossed out. Others are incomplete. Some are just strange. One, for instance, is labelled Nightingale Draft, not for delivery, and contains nothing but a single curved feather and an empty envelope. Another reads, Worn by no one, meant for someone. You pull out the last item in the box, a bonnet frame, same as Camille's. This is not coincidence. Claudette sees it too. That's the pattern, she murmurs, the one from the fire. You blink. 1842, she adds, the bonnet that was never delivered. You remember the ledger entry, the faint ink, the stitched date. Historians still argue whether the hat was meant for the bride or the arsonist. You begin examining the frame. The wire is older than anything in your station, bent but strong. The silk is brittle. But beneath it, tucked into the seam, is a slip of paper. Of course. Do not complete unless you are certain of the consequence. You show it to no one. Later that day, Madam calls you over. Her face is unreadable. I've received a letter, she says. You tense. She opens a small, pale envelope. Inside, a request for a replica of the 1842 piece. Anonymous, signed only with the symbol of a rose. Madame locks eyes with you. They've asked you to make it, you swallow. Who are they? She doesn't answer, just says, do not improvise. You spend the next 2 hours laying out the frame, checking the structure, measuring lace against your own sketches. It's eerie how well you know the shape now, like your fingers remembered before your mind did. Claudette passes once. If you finish it, hang it inside Camille's wardrobe. What happens then? If it's accepted, she'll wear it. You don't ask what rejection looks like. You work late into the evening. Each stitch feels heavier, not physically, symbolically, like threading memory itself. The lace hums. The trim seems to breathe. You finish it just as the shop darkens. You carry the bonnet, trembling slightly, to Camille's armoire. You open the door. Inside, darkness and a mirror. Not mercury, not glass. Just something that reflects only your hands. You hang the bonnet, shut the door, and whisper, let it be the right time. You return to your station, sit, and wait. At midnight you check the armoire again. It's empty. Camille is now wearing the bonnet, the 1842 replica, and in your pocket the letter is gone. But your thimble is no longer yours. It's engraved now, SS. You never had it marked, but you don't remove it, because now it's your turn. The next morning arrives with frost on the windows and ink on your fingertips. You don't remember writing, but there it is. On the hem of your apron, stitched in neat red thread, a phrase you didn't sew. The stitch remembers. You stare at it while sipping lukewarm chicory coffee. No one comments on the change. In fact, no one seems surprised at all. Camille stands in her corner wearing the 1842 bonnet. It suits her in a way that makes your skin itch, like it was always meant to be hers, and she was always meant to be wearing something meant for mourning. Claudette says nothing, but you notice she walks a little wider around Camille today. You do too. Your task today. Retouch the ceremonial brims. It should be routine. It isn't. You're handed 5 hats with histories. Quite literally. These are the old bonnets. The ones that used to belong to seamstresses long gone, redyed, reshaped, resold. You know because they still carry their names. Not written, woven. Lizette's is here. You see it immediately. The trim spirals inward. The ribbon knots are impossibly small, mathematically perfect, and beneath the lining a single silver bead that's too heavy for its size. Claudette leans in. You feel it? You nod. They don't leave, she says. Not really. And then, neither will you. You want to laugh, you want to argue, you don't. Instead, you lift a second hat. This one belonged to someone marked ML. You remember her from the ledger. Marie-Laure, the girl who designed a hat that made 3 duchesses cry at once. She vanished during the lace strike of 74. The brim carries her tension. It resists your needle. It pulls tight, then loose, like a breath you can't quite steady. The silk is stained at the inner edge. Blood or ink? Historians still argue. You sew gently, respectfully. And when you finish, you whisper, "Thank you." The brim relaxes in your hand. In the corner of the room, Léonie is working with a spool of black thread. She doesn't notice when it runs out. The thread continues anyway. No one mentions it. You do not look directly at it. Madame enters mid-morning. Her hair is pinned in a high twist, her gloves back on, her eyes gleaming like candlelight through wine glass. "We've received a letter," she says. The room stills. Her gaze sweeps across the apprentices, lands on you. "An order? Of course," you say. "You've been fulfilling orders for weeks. This one is particular." She opens a folded note, reads aloud, "I require a hat for a reunion, one that hides regret, frames forgiveness, and fits a head that never bowed." She looks up. No trim, no veil, only meaning. Anise leans back. "That's a confession hat." You blink. "Those are real?" Claudette snorts. "Everything's real if it's stitched correctly." You get to work. You choose a flat brim, neutral shape, strong crown, then come the subtleties, a white base, honesty, midnight blue lining, unspoken grief, threaded band in bronze, balance. Neither gold for arrogance nor silver for loss. At the inner edge, you add a thin row of knots. 7. One for each thing never said. You finish just as twilight leans in through the upper windows. Madame inspects the piece. Her hands pause over the brim. Her gaze narrows. "She'll weep when she wears it," she says. You're not sure if that's success or punishment. That evening you find a note pinned to your apron. "Tomorrow bring Camille to the mirror." That's all. No signature, no seal. Just handwriting you recognize. Yours. You don't sleep much that night. When dawn comes, you do as told. You wait until the shop is still, before orders, before footsteps, and wheel Camille to the back hallway, to the mirror, the mercury mirror, uncovered now, glinting in the dim light. You position Camille in front of it, and then step back. The surface ripples. Your breath catches. Camille's reflection stares back. But now it's not hers. It's yours, wearing the 1842 bonnet, lips parted, eyes wide, and behind you, in the glass, rows of seamstresses stretching into darkness. Lisette, Marie-Laure, Edith, the ones who never left, the ones who stitched too closely. You reach up to touch your hair. So does the reflection. You turn. Camille hasn't moved. But your own hat, gone. You're wearing the 1842 bonnet now. No one saw you put it on. You stare into the mirror again. There's something stitched into the lining. You read it slowly. "This is how we return." You leave Camille at the mirror. You don't remember deciding that. It just happens. One moment she's wheeled into position like always, and the next. She belongs there. Like a portrait hung in the wrong frame, but somehow exactly where it's meant to be. The 1842 bonnet rests on your head now, not heavy, not tight, just final. No one comments when you walk back into the workroom wearing it. Not Claudette, not Anaïs, not even Madame Moreau. They all glance once, then look away. Today, no orders are given, no hat boxes arrive. No messengers tap their gloved fingers against the front desk. Instead, Madame enters with a small wooden case. She places it on the centre table with great care, then opens it. Inside, a single hat form, raw, unadorned, a blank, no brim, no lining, no purpose. "This," she says softly, "is the last hat." You don't ask what that means. You just know you've been asked to make it. The others return to their stations, quietly gathering materials. No one is told what to sew, but somehow everyone knows. Claudette stitches a ribbon that hums when touched. Annie embroiders a name that changes under candlelight. Leonie unravels thread from an old veil, winds it slowly and hands it to you like an offering. You begin. The hat is for no one, and everyone. You build the shape first, elegant, undecided. It could be morning, or wedding, or farewell. You line it with silk too soft for fingers. You edge it in silver thread pulled from the ledger bindings, and beneath the crown you leave one stitch loose, for air, for memory, for return. As you work, the workshop changes, not visibly, but the air shifts, thicker, quieter. The gas lights burn lower, even though no one touches them. From the back of the shop comes a sound, footsteps, soft, measured, not Madame's. You don't turn. The others don't flinch. They've heard it too. By the time you place the final knot, something is waiting. You hold the hat in your lap, hand steady, heart not. Madame approaches. "This was never about hats," she says. You nod. It was about holding what others drop, stitching what others can't say. She places a hand on your shoulder, and letting go when it's time. The room breathes. You rise, hat in hand. You turn to Camille, but she's gone. Only the mirror remains, its surface still. You step closer. Your reflection meets you. Same eyes, same mouth, same hands. But you're not wearing the 1842 bonnet anymore. You're holding it. You're offering it. And the mirror accepts. You place the hat at its base. The light flickers once and the weight in your chest lifts. You have finished. You are part of the ledger now, not written, stitched. The room slowly returns. Claudette is crying silently. Anais hums something you don't know. Madame begins sweeping, as if it's any other day. And outside, Paris breathes smoke, lace and spring. You step toward the door. Madame doesn't stop you. No one does. You push it open. It's raining. You don't mind. Your apron is clean. Your hands, for once, are whole. You've survived the hat shop. But more than that, you've become it. The rain softens as you walk. It drips down the cobblestones, slides across your sleeves, gathers in the crooks of old buildings and broken memories. Paris hums with low wheels, tired hooves, a violin somewhere behind shutters. You don't rush. You don't need to. Each step feels lighter, though your boots are damp. Each breath steadier, though the air still carries traces of dust and dye. There is no bonnet in your hands now, no needle in your pocket, no note hidden under your collar. And yet, something remains. The feel of the fabric, the rhythm of the stitch, the quiet weight of invisible names carried inside the brim. You stop at a bakery window, watch the lamplight flicker over loaves and lace-curtained glass. A woman inside adjusts her shawl and smiles at no one in particular. She wears a simple hat, black ribbon, clean curve. And you know, someone made that. Someone listened. Someone stitched what she couldn't say out loud. You turn the corner, slower now. The city doesn't notice you, but the wind lifts your coat like it remembers, and as the rain fades and your reflection flickers faintly in the puddled stones, you smile, because you survived. And maybe, just maybe, you were never meant to. 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 You were never meant to.